Welcome to Night Fiction, where the realms of imagination come alive after dark. I'm your guide through a labyrinth of captivating stories, thrilling narratives, and mysterious adventures. Join me under the starry digital sky as we explore the enchanting world of night fiction together. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let the journey into the night begin. Chapter 1. Prologue. Recovery Girl did not move. After the selection meeting for the hero course's future students, everyone had left the room but her. Instead of grabbing her trusted cane and walking back to the infirmary, Recovery Girl read the file on her hand over and over and over again. Midoriya Izuku. Quirk, Healing Contact. The name is self-explanatory. Anyone Midoriya Izuku came in direct contact with, he will be able to heal any injuries they have. Even old and untreatable ones, at the cost of his stamina. A quirk too much the same yet different from hers. But a healing quirk wasn't that uncommon. Not in this day and age. What caught her attention was the boy she saw. The boy who ran through dangers with the most tiresome expression on his face, risking his own safety to help people he's never met. All with the most genuine smile. And Aizawa rejected his application. Claiming someone who isn't willing to hurt others doesn't belong in the hero course. The man always has a point, as much bullshit as that point is, sometimes. But the decision was final, and the door was closed. A spot in general education will let him get another shot at the sport festival, but called her cruel and a pessimist, but the chances were slim. The sport festival is usually a show-off show for the hero course, and only someone who is at least on par with them at showing off could have a thin shot. And the boy's quirk could do harm to no one but himself. All in all, it was setting up hope to crush it. And she couldn't stand that. Not while she is here. Chio reprimanded herself at the poor imitation of her old friend and the blonde oaf. With determination, Chio finally grabbed the cane and left the room, but not back to her office. Izuku. Jolted awake by his mother's frantic scream, Izuku rubbed his tired eyes before he set the pair of chopsticks he was holding down. Calmly, he walked towards the living room before getting bummed into by his mother. "Mom, what's wrong?" Izuku asked with a soft smile. "You know you can't flood the apartment with your tears again. Sato-san downstairs has been getting grumpier." "That's not important," Inko yelled back, before showing Izuku a letter she held in her hand. Yue's letter has arrived. For the first time since he woke up this morning, Izuku finally displayed an expression other than tiredness. His eyes widened at the revelation, gaining more energy than ever. Maybe with a little dreadfulness along with it. Slowly, he took the letter from his mother's hand and studied it. "It's the real thing," he mumbled. "You go and open it," Inko shouted, snapping him out of his thought. "I'll clean up the table. Just go to your room and open it." Without a chance to reply, Izuku was pushed into his room. A moment of hesitation passed, and Izuku finally gathered up the courage to open the letter. Slowly tearing the seal off, Izuku found a coin-shaped device falling out of the envelope. He clicked on it and to his shock, a hologram projection of his hero appeared, her face serious and firm. "Good day to you, Midoriya Izuku." The senior lady in a white coat with pink visor spoke up. "My name is Shuzenji Chio, more commonly known as Recovery Girl, and I'm here to announce your result." Izuku sped up his breathing unconsciously. "You were among the highest scorers for the written exam. Almost a perfect mark, if not for that one spelling mistake you made in the essay question," she continued, unaware of Izuku's relief breath at the result. Halfway there, he thought. As for the practical exam. The hologram then turned into footage of Izuku dashing through the exam site, helping a brown-haired girl up on her feet while healing her injuries with his quirk. "Instead of destroying robots, you focused on aiding others. You did not take down even a single robot, Midoriya-kun. We do have rescue points in place, but even with them, I'm saddened to say that you weren't qualified into the hero course." The lack of response was the only thing Izuku could do. Just as expected, Izuku hung his head down, not even having the energy to shed a tear. He considered turning off the projection and just fell back to sleep. But before he could do that, Recovery Girl showed a smirk as she continued. "That is where I came in." Her words stopped him from turning off the hologram. "I see the potential in you, Midoriya-kun, and I want to help you explore it. Principal Nezu did too, as he signed this." She revealed a piece of paper. "Apprenticeship," she explained. "Aside from your education in the general course, you will also be taking medical lessons with me. I'll teach you everything you need to know about being a healer, all in the span of 1 year. Once I deemed you qualify, you'll get the chance to transfer to the hero course. I need to make one thing clear though. I'll work you to the bones. So, you had better think twice before accepting this. Regardless of your decision, a seat in general education is already yours, Midoriya Izuku. Welcome to your Maybe Hero Academia." The noise of a door being shut loudly jolted Izuku out of his sleep. With a yawn, he looked over and found his mentor walking in with an annoyed expression. "Chiyo-sensei?" Izuku asked as he watched the old lady make her way towards her chair. "Who pissed you off this time?" "Your girlfriend, that's who," she replied, not looking over as she set the cane and threw herself onto the chair. "The first year with the gravity quirk. Aizawa thought it would be nice to let them go all out on hand-to-hand combat." "Uraraka-san?" Izuku chuckled as he brewed the tea. "Right, like I'm lucky enough to date her." He didn't notice the deadpan look Chiyo gave him. "That tea set is a gift from 1A's vice president, right? What about her?" "Yaoyorozu-san?" Izuku hummed as he put sugar into the tea. "She's amazing. I think the right word here is, too good for me." A painful groan escaped Chiyo. Almost a year in and her idiot of a student still hasn't realized a single thing. "Okay, let's assume 1A is out of the equation," she continued, accepting the cup of tea from Izuku. "What of 1B? The one with the vine hair? She definitely blushed when she talked to you this morning." "Quite concerning, isn't it?" Izuku nodded. "I told her she could rest here, and I'll watch over her until she gets better, but her face just turned redder. The seasonal fever is really getting out of hand. I think even Kuros-sensei caught it." Watching her student put on a concerned and thoughtful look, Chiyo couldn't help but mumble. Why did Setsuna have to fall for such a rockhead? "What's that about Tokage-san?" Izuku asked. "Oh no, did she catch the fever as well? Should I run over and check?" "She's fine. Quit yapping." Chiyo grabbed her cane as she threatened to whoop Izuku with it. "I just don't understand her taste in men. Any of their tastes in men, actually." Izuku tilted his head in confusion. Less than a year ago, Shizunage Chiyo took Midoriya Izuku in with hope that he could succeed her, to be the one who helps heroes. Yet here she is, watching that boy seducing every single person without even realizing it. She knew she didn't regret teaching him. She was just worried he might actually be why she has a heart attack in the future. Chapter 2. Case 1. Uraraka Ochako Case File Number 1, Uraraka Ochako. Dear Diary, I'm afraid my nurse is going to get jumped. Deep breath, Izuku, deep breath. Izuku whispered to himself in front of the giant door. The sign said, 1C, looking down at him, waiting for him to open the door and enter. Taking in a deep breath as he told himself, Izuku entered the classroom. He's not here. Ochako whispered to herself as she looked around the classroom for a familiar set of fluffy green hair. She did catch sight of some fluffy hair, but both were pink and purple. Heck, the only green hair belonged to a girl who sat scarily still. Did he not make it in? But that's impossible. She only made it thanks to him. Rescue point was a thing, wasn't it? No one deserved those points more than that boy she saw running around, helping everyone in sight. The loud, glasses guy and the sparkling guy made it in. How the heck did that green angel not? Maybe he's in 1B. But before Ochako could come up with more possible scenarios, a yellow caterpillar on the ground caught her, and everyone's, attention. Izuku-kun. Looking up from his talk with Chiyo on their way back to the infirmary, Izuku saw a cheerful set of brown hair running towards him. She was still in her pink with a dark accent, skin-tight hero costume, waving with the most enthusiasm he ever saw from another human being. Uraraka-san. Izuku greeted back with a smile, not noticing Chiyo letting out a tired sigh. You look happy today. Did something good happen? Just happy to see you. Ochako replied with a blush, a gesture Izuku registered as her getting tired from running. Running immediately after strenuous exercise is really not good for your health. Without hesitation, Izuku put a hand on Ochako's forehead, looking straight at her intensely for signs of fatigue. Your face is kind of hot, right now. You're not making any eyes contact. You're making some strange noises. It doesn't look like fatigue, but it's not normal, either. Chiyo-sensei, what's your thought? I believe you should let the poor girl have some space before she fainted. Chiyo calmly replied. While her rock-headed student was looking for signs, she had to witness the poor girl's face reach a new level of redness at the closeness. Well, I'm just going to use my quirk, just in case. Meanwhile, Izuku did not take a single clue as he grew more worried and started to grab Ochako's hand. At the sudden contact, Ochako let out some more gibberish as she watched her hand being gently held by Izuku. Izuku-kun. Ochako managed to stutter out a response. I'm fine. Really? You're going to get tired from using your quirk. What's a little fatigued if I could help you? Izuku joked, not noticing smoke started emitting from Ochako's bright red face. Hell, I'll do this for the rest of my life if I have to. Anything for you, Uraraka-san. Both didn't notice Chiyo already gave up and left. Excuse me, is anyone here? Ochako dragged herself into the infirmary with the most exhaustion she's ever felt. Mentally, that is. The entrance exam took the cake for physical exhaustion. Immediately after the threat of expulsion from her homeroom teacher, Ochako had to sit through lunch without eating a single thing. Dinner water is all she needs to stay healthy throughout the day. Daily lunch and breakfast just put more of a toll on her already limited pocket. To top on all of that, the quirk apprehension test made the atmosphere in her class tenser than ever. After realizing that they could get expelled at any moment, no one tried to strike up a conversation with anyone, which just made her focus more on her growling stomach. Hi, good evening. She didn't have the energy to turn towards where voice was coming from, focusing instead on staying awake. Recovery girl just left, but I'm here to look after the office when she's out. Can I help you with anything? I'm fine. Ochako dragged herself onto the bed. I just need to rest. Today has been tiring. Ah, overwhelming first day, I assume. The soft, kind and somewhat familiar voice chuckled. Recovery girl did tell me to expect someone from the first year to come. Ochako could hear noises of the cupboards being searched, along with the sound of water being poured into a cup. Usually, sleeping the tiredness off would be recommended, but sleeping with an empty stomach just makes it worse. She then saw a yakisoba bread being placed in front of her face. Without missing a single step, Ochako tore the packaging off and devoured the bread with only a few bites. She quickly snatched the cup of water away from the nurse's hand and gulped down the water. Easy there. The nurse's chuckle somehow even got softer. Saving someone 3 times in a row would be a new record for me. Ochako's head shot up and, in an instant, she recognized that face. The green angel who lifted that piece of debris up and rescued her. The same angel she's been looking for all morning. It's you, she screamed, earning a chuckle from him. Good to see you again too, Gravity Girl. He smiled as he offered her another glass of water. Rough day in the hero course. The worst. Ochako groaned before she gulped down another glass of water. I take it you're having an easier day? Orientation was interesting. Izuku hummed. Nezu-sensei sure loves to talk about how to keep his hair smooth and fluffy. I still don't know how both those things went together. Other than that, it's mostly just a quick look over at what we're about to learn. Even Recovery Girl ONL briefed me about what I should do while I'm here. So, 1B hasn't done the quirk apprehension test yet? Ochako tilted her head curiously. Well, I haven't seen anyone from 1B came yet. Izuku closed his eyes, trying to remember. But I doubt a quirk apprehension would result in someone coming here. Wait, huh? This time, Ochako's confused noise made Izuku look over at her. You're not in 1B? No. Izuku replied slowly, not understanding Ochako's shocked expression. I'm in 1C. General Education Department. But yeah, it's pretty cool that Midnight is our homeroom teacher. Like, they let pro heroes. But, Ochako sat up. Why aren't you in the hero course? You helped a lot of people. I guess I'm just not what UA looks for. Izuku smiled sadly. But on the other hand, Recovery Girl herself offered to be my mentor. You've gotta jump on that chance immediately, girl. Ochako couldn't believe her ears. The guy the hero sitting in front of her wasn't qualified. Was UA stupid? He literally ran through the entire exam site just to help others. Nothing screams, hero's material, louder than that. And yet, a great pervert got in instead of him? Would he be in the hero course if he hadn't risked saving me? A thought occurred in Ochako's head. It stinks, yes, but it's not the end of the world. Izuku's words snapped Ochako out of her thought. I have the chance to work with my all-time favorite heroine. It's my fault. Ochako's mindless mutter stopped Izuku's ranting. You failed because you had to jump in and save me from my stupid mistake. You could have been destroying robots and gotten more points if it hadn't for me. It's all my fault. Before Ochako could finish, she felt a swift, sharp pain in her forehead. She let out a painful yelp and looked up at the perpetrator. The green hair angel just flicked her forehead. Quit that, please. A frown appeared on Izuku's face. Ochako will never admit loudly that it doesn't suit his kind, pretty and cute face. I failed because of me, alright. No one else. I don't regret helping others, so you shouldn't regret getting helped. But, I saved you because I wanted to. Izuku firmly cut Ochako's off with a smirk. I made a choice. If UA decided they wanted to fail me because of that, then too bad. I'm not changing my decisions. Never. I do this to help people. What's the point of becoming a hero if I have to abandon someone who needs help? Ochako could only stare at Izuku wordlessly, not even noticing a slight tinge of blush appeared on her cheeks. Thankfully, the boy himself took that more seriously than it should have been. Say, since you're already here, do you want me to use my quirk on you? Just like the entrance exam? He got closer and whispered into her ears, turning Ochako's blush harder. My quirk lets me heal others at the cost of my own energy. That's what I did at the entrance exam. BBB, but are you allowed to do that? Ochako stuttered. I don't think we can use our quirks without permission on school ground. What are you, a cop? Izuku chuckled. Wait, that's a stupid question. Ignore it. But you're right. Recovery Girl hasn't allowed me to use my quirk without her supervision just yet. But before Ochako could say anything else, she could hear Izuku's voice become more playful as he whispered into her ears. How about we let this become our little secret? Ochako fainted immediately as Izuku gently held her hands. One of your friends just dropped this off. Chiyo threw a shirt in Izuku's direction. Ignoring Chiyo's emphasis on the word friends, Izuku immediately brightened up at the sight of his favorite shirt. Taking a glance at the shirt, Chiyo visibly gagged at its appearance. How is that your favorite shirt? It's funny. Izuku showed her a plain black t-shirt with the word gym outfit written on it. It's horrible. Chiyo remarked. Why did you even give that thing to someone? That thing could even rival my great niece's hoodie in horribleness. Tokage's hoodie is awesome. Izuku stuck out his tongue in response. But I gave this shirt to Kirishima-san after his got burnt during training. Ah, I remember now. Chiyo nodded with a tired expression. That was a recorded simultaneous nosebleed at one moment. Quite scary, wasn't it? Izuku chuckled grimly. 40 simultaneous nosebleeds at the same time. I still think it was a villain's quirk at play. Not because you took off your shirt in front of them? Chiyo asked incredulously. Why would they bleed at me taking off my shirt? Chiyo ignored his question as she continued typing into her computer. You sure you're better now? I can still go at it for another half an hour. Izuku asked Ochako, who was leaving the room with an energetic expression on her face that turned red at the phrasing. I'm fine. 100%, Ochako laughed a little too loudly. I'll see you soon. Oh, right. Izuku chuckled as he offered his hand. Midoriya Izuku. Nice to meet you. Uraraka Ochako. Ochako accepted the shake. School life was looking brighter for her. A.N. Witness how I tortured Ochako with a dense Izuku. Who should be next, by the way? Toru? Kirishima? Someone from 1B? The possibilities are endless with this one. Chapter 3. Case 2. Hagakure Toru Case File Number 2, Hagakure Toru. Dear Diary, I think my nurse assistant is talking to himself again. I didn't know the winter is coming. Izuku looked up from the gigantic medical book that Chiyo forced him to squeeze the contents into his head. Over at the desk, Chiyo set the phone down with another tired look. 1A. She explained without a retort at the joke. Tosh, the Hero Foundation's teacher, thought it would be great to conduct quirk combat on their first week at school. All without safety guidelines nor precautions. That's dangerous. Izuku set the book down and went over to help his mentor with preparing medical supplies. Shouldn't this be their first time using their quirk against another human being? Yes, Chiyo confirmed. And yet that blonde oaf thought it would be nice to pitch those teenagers against one another. I swear, if not for that stupid quirk of his, I would already have beaten him to death with this cane. Ignoring the blonde and mysterious quirk part, Izuku chuckled awkwardly as he received the frostburn treatments. I don't think doctors are supposed to kill people, recovery girl. You took that oath last week, not me. Chiyo casually remarked. Why do you think I always have a cane with me? Because you're going to crumble without it? Ha! Youngsters these days, underestimating their elders. Chiyo laughed. I'll have you know I used to bench press all might when I was young. Was it after you took your dinosaur out for a walk, Grandem? Izuku got cut off with a bottle of medicine threw at his face. Don't use the G word with me, young man. I am the youthful heroine, she commanded, before kissing Izuku on the nose to heal him. My bad. Izuku rubbed his once injured nose. Back to the main topic. Why are we prepping frostburn medical supplies? One of the students decided to freeze an entire building in one shot to win the exercise. Chiyo explained. 2 students were caught in the glacier. One just needs a blanket to cool down. The other one, however, wasn't wearing any sort of clothes, so they caught the worst of it. I see. Izuku nodded as he looked at the tablet displaying a building engulfed in ice. Suddenly, Chiyo's words hit him harder than any punches he ever received. What do you mean by, wasn't wearing any sort of clothes? Chiyo then handed him a table containing Hagakure Toru's file and watched his reaction. Just as she and Nezu expected, Izuku wore the most flabbergasted expression ever as he read through the information. Oh, hey, Hagakure-san. Izuku waved towards the empty chair in the corner as he entered. Surprised by her name being called out of the blue, Toru turned towards the door and found the school's her favorite nurse strolled inside, looking as tired as ever. However, before she could voice her concern, another beat her to it. "Nurse." An energetic, cheerful voice spoke up loudly. "Why do you look like you haven't slept for 3 days straight?" "I sleep just fine, Hatsume-san," Izuku answered as he rubbed his panda-looking eyes. "I just came back from a mission with Chio-sensei. Some villains just don't get that people rest during weekends." "Shouldn't you be resting, then?" Mei looked at him with concern. At the side, quietly, Toru got closer to Izuku and inspected his eye patches. He looked like he could barely keep his eyes open. "I am about to." Izuku nodded. "Are you joining me in bed?" Mei and Toru's brains shut down right there. Not noticing the two girls in front of him froze up, Izuku casually continued. "Remember? Powerloader sensei asked me to make sure you get enough sleep." He gently grabbed Mei's hand, who did not react even the slightest, and set the screwdriver she was holding down on a nearby table. "The infirmary is empty right now, so we got our own beds. We could probably get a few hours of sleep in before we have to vacate the room." Before Izuku left with a still frozen-up Mei, he looked over at Toru. "Do you want to come too, Hagakure-san?" I sleep fine not. You go on with or without me, please." Toru managed to stutter out weird sentences due to her brain not recovering from the previous shock. "I see." He smiled gently. "Nice braids, by the way. They suit you a lot." "Wah, how did you know I braided my hair?" Toru asked with a tinge of disbelief in her voice as she unconsciously caressed her braids with a reddened face that she hoped he couldn't tell. "A hunch you just confirmed for me." Izuku chuckled as he left the room without looking back. "You've been playing with them the moment I got in the room. I just wasn't sure if those were braids or ponytail. Like last time." "FRRRR rost bur rrrn su uux." Toru's teeth clattered together as Izuku and Chio treated her injuries. Izuku focused on wrapping Toru's injuries up while Chio carefully kissed her on the right cheek to heal the injuries. After she made sure there was nothing left for her to do and Izuku could take care of the rest, Chio turned towards Izuku. "I'm going to make sure that Blonde Oaf doesn't send any more students my way. Look over the office for a minute for me, dearie." "Ait, RG." Satisfied with her student's answer, Chio left the room. Toru sat in an awkward silence as she watched the nurse sort out the supplies while whistling a familiar tune that she couldn't place for the life of her. "Hey, Nurse-san." Toru finally spoke up, gaining Izuku's attention. "I don't believe I caught your name earlier?" "It's Midoriya Izuku. 1C, General Education Department." He introduced himself, not breaking eye contact with her, which was the weirdest thing, in her opinion. "You are Hagakure Toru, correct?" "Why yeah." Shaking herself off the weird eye contact thing, Toru looked away. "So, you're a nurse? At this age? You've done this before?" "Not quite." The nurse's smile somehow got softer and kinder than it already was. "Most of my first aid knowledge came from books and community courses. I did help whoever needed their injuries tend to, but none was this official." "Must be nice." Toru giggled. "Here I am, failing my first heroic lesson." "I wouldn't say it's your fault." Izuku hummed non-committedly as he checked over the labels of some medicines. "You shouldn't even be put in that situation in the first place. It's only your first lesson, after all. And, whoever made that thing you called a hero costume should be put on the gallows." It's not that terrible." Toru stuttered at the casual remarks. "My quirk is invisibility. There's not much they can do about my situation." "Nah. With a smooth, swift motion, Izuku pulled out a notebook from somewhere and turned towards the destined page. He revealed the page's content to Toru. "Okay, first of all, calling your quirk invisibility is just stupid. How do you think your quirk works?" Decided to blow past the rude remarks, Toru answered. "My body naturally refracts light. That's why I can't be seen." Oversimplified. Izuku clicked his tongue. "How do you think light works on our eyes?" "I don't. Light needs to hit our eyes so that we can see. If light just went through your eyes, what do you think would happen?" "I would be blind." Toru realized. But maybe my quirk has some ways to work around that concept. Quirks are bullshit, after all." "Quirks are bullshit. That's without a doubt." Izuku nodded. "But even they obey the law of physics. Sometimes they may work around it, even mess with it. But they do not disregard the natural law of physics. Take my quirk, for example. I channel my own vitality and transfer it to other people through direct contact, but I can't do it on myself." Not even pretending to understand the science that came out of Izuku's mouth, Toru asked, anxiously at the implications of Izuku's word. Then how does my quirk related to any of this?" "My theory is you aren't completely invisible." Izuku proudly announced his theory, missing Toru's hitched breath. Your pupils must be visible in the smallest, thinnest way possible to allow you to see. It's invisible to the human's eyes, but it's there. It's visible. That's how you can see. If you can figure out how it works, you may be able to switch between invisibility and visibility with a simple flick of a finger. How does that relate to your hero costume, you may ask? Well, a skin-tight suit tailored with your specific DNA can turn invisible and visible with you, so you won't have to walk around in your baby's uniform anymore. Well, it's not technically a baby's uniform because of the gloves and boots, but it's preposterous, nonetheless. No one should walk around like that even if they can't be say. I can become visible? With one simple sentence, Toru made Izuku stop in the middle of his ranting. Not understanding the heavy implications behind those words, Izuku answered. Theoretically speaking, at least. It's just a theory. A quirk theory. He smirked to himself, proud at the joke. All of a sudden, Toru's silence turned into sobs, and Izuku's brain stopped operating. Although overwhelmed by the sudden show of emotion, Izuku gently grabbed Toru's hand and spoke in the softest tone he could. I don't want to give you any false hope, Hagakure-san. Toru sobbed more at Izuku's words. But as long as it is still a possibility, Recovery Girl and I will work to the graves to make sure you can reach your full potential. She looked up. In front her was still the same set of viridian eyes. But the tiredness it had was completely replaced by determination and assurance. Not once did they break away from her own. For the first time ever in her life, Toru could feel someone looking at her. Where are those notebooks coming from, by the way? Setsuna asked, eyes still staring at Izuku's back in disbelief. What notebooks? Izuku replied cluelessly as he continued his writing. That. Setsuna pointed at the notebook Izuku was holding in his hand. In return, Izuku looked at where Setsuna was pointed at and looked back at her with worry. You sure Tetsu-san's punch didn't leave a concussion? Setsuna turned towards her great aunt as a last resort, trying to understand the sheer madness that was happening. Much to her disappointment, her aunt just gave her a cup of tea. Something aren't for us mortals to know, Setsuna. Chiyo casually said as she sipped her tea. Learn to live with it. Your life will be much easier. Setsuna gulped down the cup of tea like it was a bottle of liquor. I'll talk with Shuzenji-sensei about your hero costume. Izuku assured Toru. The person who went through with the gloves and boots is already dead. To her, at least. I took an oath, sadly. Giggling at the joke, Toru mindlessly tugged her invisible hair behind her ears. Thank you, Midoriya-kun. Honestly. You don't know how much you've helped me. It's in the job description. Izuku smiled at her words. I'll be here if you need help with your quirk. Can I come visit for, lunch and stuff? Time to time? Toru asked meekly, not daring to meet Izuku's eyes this time. Just don't come wearing this again. You don't know how hard it is for me to keep my thoughts at bay. Before Toru could burst into flame from embarrassment, Izuku continued. No feelings could describe how angry I am at this. Gloves and boots. It's an insult to the support industry. Nothing boils my blood more than this. Alright. Toru whistled. I'm angry, too. Nothing but anger. Definitely only anger. A.N. What notebooks? Y'all being crazy. Also, bro casually brought out the big gun with that betting offer. Bet Recovery Girl will have a stroke coming. Finding 2, 3 teenagers sleeping together on separate beds in her infirmary. Lord knows who next, cuz I surely don't. Chapter 4, Case 3, Koda Koji. Dear Diary, is there any way to check if someone is a Disney's princess? Angel exists. He knew it. One appeared in front of him. It all happened too fast, though. One moment, he was having lunch with Shoji and Tokiyami, next thing he knew, the alarm almost blew his ears off. Chaos ensued immediately after. Students pushed against one another, completely disregarding others' safety. Thankfully, with his figure being naturally larger than others, Koji wasn't hurt too badly. Physically, at least. The sound of alarm blaring through the hall, students screaming, telling each other to move, combined, triggered a panic attack. As a selective mute, Koji never asked for anyone's help. Whenever he was having any of his episodes, an animal friend always came and was there for him, helping him to calm down. But currently, with the chaos ensuing, even with his best effort through the panic attack, no one heeded his call. Everything was becoming blurry, and he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. How many times do I need to tell you, Midoriya Izuku, that this is not a pet cafe? Upon entering, Chiyo could already see a headache incoming. Yue's big three, its pride, was sitting on the floor, cuddling a rabbit. Chiyo-sensei. Her assistant, the one she left in charge of the infirmary while she was gone, was brewing tea like usual. A cup of tea? Please. Chiyo asked before switching back to the main issue. Why is there a rabbit here? Izuku answered as he offered Chiyo a cup of tea, who thanked him as she grabbed it. Kota-san asked me to watch over his rabbit. He's out with Tokiyami-san to buy groceries. Really? Chiyo quirked an eyebrow. I heard that boy is very protective and secretive of his rabbit. That's why I told him, I'll take care of any needs you have and show you a good time. Those were your exact words? Chiyo emphasized. Yeah. And you said those while looking at him? Of course. Izuku smiled innocently. I need to assure him Yui-chan will be well taken care of and she'll have fun here. Chiyo had half a mind to chew the teacup and be done with it. Nod if you can hear my voice. Watching the student with a rock-shaped head in front him nodded shakily. Izuku immediately focused his energy and passed it to him. I'm definitely going to get complained to for using my quirk on another student, again. Izuku whispered in a soft tone, but contrary to his word, Izuku was smiling. But they should have better security if they really want to enforce that rule, right? Seeing the boy in front of him letting out a soft giggle as his breath became steadier, Izuku slowly reduced the intensity of his quirk but still kept it going. After 5 minutes or so, the deafening alarm stopped, allowing Koji to calm down faster. Finally regaining a clear view, a set of green, unnaturally fluffy hair that reminded him of a forest, smiled at him. Despite the heavy eyebags that caught the attention of anyone looking at them, Koji could see the kindness inside his eyes. Nod if you can see me clearly now. The angel in front of him whispered in a soft tone. Following his request, Koji nodded timidly. The smile somehow got kinder, hearing his response, making his heart skip a beat. The angel put his hand into his coat pocket and took out something, or someone. Jerry here led me to you. A small, gray mouse sitting in the angel's palm squeaked a happy noise before running off. I'll put the cheese near your door. The angel smiled, looking towards where the little mouse was running off. Koji quickly pulled out his phone to type in his appreciation, but before he could do it, the angel continued to surprise him. You can sign if you want to. Although his hands were definitely shaking now, Koji managed to sign. Thank you for helping me. You're welcome. The angel nodded. Sorry for using my quirk without asking you first. Koji waved his hands frantically before signing again. I should be the one who apologized. Kayama-sensei and Shuzenji-sensei will cover for me. Don't worry about it. The green angel chuckled, before he looked at his phone with widened eyes. We should get back to our classes. Just find me at the nurse's office after school if you need anything else, okay? Without missing a beat, Izuku helped Koji up on his feet and ran off towards where one see it, leaving the hero student standing there, wondering if he had an unknown heart disease. You know you really shouldn't feed rodents infesting the school, right? Chiyo said as she watched Izuku put some leftovers into a bento box. It's not the 14th century. The boy replied casually as he continued packing the food. And you're not a plague doctor. That would make a cool Halloween's cosplay for us, though. I wear a costume every day, dearie. Chiyo replied, losing interest in reprimanding her student. It's always Halloween. Izuku only chuckled at her response. Before Izuku could wave goodbye to Chiyo, the door to the nurse's office opened and a woman with short, blue navy-colored hair in a spacesuit peeked her head inside. Shuzenji-san, the principal is looking for you. Did he said what is it about? Chiyo looked at her. Something about your old friend. Letting out a sigh, Chiyo grabbed her cane and left the room after reminding Izuku to clean up the infirmary before he went home. After Chiyo had left, Anon turned towards Izuku. Going home now, Midoriya-kun. After I feed the mice. Izuku shook the food bag with a smile, before leaving the room with Anon. I heard the mouses are helping Nezu with collecting information. Anon hummed as she watched Izuku carefully place the food in creeks and mouse holes. Aizawa-senpai looked at me like a crazy person when I said that. I assume he hasn't watched Ratatouille yet? Izuku chuckled as he knocked on the wall 3 times. Anon only giggled in response as she watched Izuku work with affection in her eyes. The mouses are eating better than me. Anon sighed. Cup noodles really aren't healthy for you. I can make breakfast for you every day, if you want to. Izuku smiled before it turned into a smirk. There'll be a fee, though. Izuku rode off the sight of Anon immediately put her helmet back on. Chiyo-sensei's merch is really expensive, Izuku commented. Animals like him. He's a Disney's princess. Change my mind. Kota is hard to explore, though. Not a lot is known about him in the main story. But clearly, that didn't stop the nurse from stealing yet another heart. Also, Izuku helping Nezu feeds his rat army is something more people need to know about. Chapter 5. Case 4. Asui Suyu, Dear Diary. How is someone that smart capable of being that stupid? A field trip? Really? Izuku whispered, after that whole fiasco? I admit it's a bad idea. Nomori sighed. But at the end of the day, it's Nezu and the teacher in charge's decision. A medical staff's presence might elevate the student's concern. You can decline if you want to. I'll go with them if you think I'm any help. Izuku waved off her concern. But wouldn't Shuzenji-sensei's presence better than an intern? Nezu didn't want to raise any false alarm. Nomori made an air quote. Besides, 1B is having their battle trial today and Shuzenji wanted to avoid what happened with 1A. Izuku showed an understanding look before he went off to prepare for the trip. From behind, Nomori showed a proud smile before it turned into a frown as she whispered to herself. You better not give my student any trouble, Aizawa. Or so help me, no quirk is going to stop me from putting you into a coma. Your mother thinks I should put a GPS on you. Izuku spit out the tea he was drinking and snapped his neck at Chiyo. Quit being dramatic. It was a joke. Chiyo's expression did not change. I'm a doctor. Not your babysitter. Where you go or what you get yourself into aren't any my business. That wasn't funny. Izuku deadpanned, and I don't get into troubles. Remind me what happened last week. That night you ran out to get some medical supplies without informing anyone. It was supposed to be a short trip. Izuku mumbled. You guys are being unnecessarily overprotective. You came back with a bleeding head, Midoriya Izuku. I fell off the steps. And I still don't buy that. Chiyo sighed. Just. Don't get yourself in any trouble. You seriously remind me too much of someone I knew. This is Midoriya Izuku. He's Recovery Girl's trainee and a first year, like all of you. Aizawa gestured at Izuku, who waved at the population of 1A. He's here to observe and provide first aid if necessary. Taking a quick look at the present faces, Izuku's smile got wider at the sight of some familiar face. The one who knew him looked away, not daring to show their blushes. Everyone quickly got on the bus and separated into groups for conversation. Ochako and Toru immediately took seats next to and in front of Izuku, while Koda was content with watching him from afar. Wasn't that effective though, as Izuku always caught him staring and smiled at him. Excuse me for being rude, Midoriya-san, but did you not pass the heroics entrance exam? Tenya asked, a little too loudly as it caught everyone's attention. Ochako immediately cracked her knuckles, ready to throw hands. Yeah, I did not. Izuku chuckled awkwardly. I suppose purposefully avoiding engagements isn't a good thing for wannabe hero. But you recognized the true point of the exam, did you not? Tenya continued. You saved Uraraka-san from the zero-pointer. You even assisted Recovery Girl in her healing efforts. I merely provided the necessary amount of energy for Shuzenji-sensei to heal them. Izuku scratched his cheek. My quirk doesn't heal everything randomly. I have to know what I am healing for it to work. I see. Tenya nodded. It's a shame, though. I was looking forward to seeing you in class. No reason we couldn't see each other outside of class. Izuku smiled, unaware of Tenya freezing up. You can always find me at the nurse's office. After school, that is. Ideally when no one's around. Midoriya-san. Quickly napped out of his stupor, Tenya reprimanded through a red face. It's not appropriate to extend such invitation. Really? Izuku tilted his head and asked. An action made anyone saw it turn away. That's when I'm usually at the office. I thought it would be better if we can talk without me being distracted by work. Before Tenya could come up with any response, the bus came to a stop. Through all that, no one noticed Katsuki being oddly quiet in his seat. Midoriya, a word? Izuku turned his attention away from No 13's speech. The hobo-looking teacher, Eraserhead, he guessed to himself, called him over to the side. Izuku nodded and followed him to a spot away from other students' hearing range. I know you have a tendency to jump in and help, but this is a learning opportunity for them, Aizawa said as he glanced over at the excited students. Wait until the end of the day to reveal your quirk to them. I don't want them getting complacent just because there's a healer nearby. Isn't it worse to let them run around with injuries all over? Izuku quirked an eyebrow. They'll have to get used to it at some point. Aizawa continued, not fazed by Izuku's reasoning. Still doesn't make it right. Izuku did not back down. They're still in training. If they are scared off by a little pain, then maybe this isn't the right career path for them. Aizawa ended the conversation as he turned his back on Izuku. Let's go. We're wasting time. Although not comfortable with the teacher's ideology, Izuku opted to stay quiet for now and watch how the exercise goes. However, before number 13 could divide the class into teams, one of the students pointed at the plaza and asked, "What's that down there?" Nomori looked up from her paperwork at the noise of the door to the staff's room being opened. There, she found her student, wearing his usual white coat over the uniform, looking more tiring than ever. "Midoriya-kun. What brings you here?" "Nezu asked me to remind you that office hour is over, Kayama-sensei." Izuku smiled. "He said you can finish your paperwork tomorrow." I must have lost track of the time." Namori chuckled as she took a glance at the clock. "Why are you still here, then? Shouldn't you be back at the dorm? Are you overworking again? I swear to Nezu, I will knock you out by force if I have to." "I'm going back there now." Izuku waved off her concern. "I'm just prepping some stuff in advance for Chiyo-sensei." "Ah. What a good student you are." Namori smiled as she closed the door to the office and teasing pinched Izuku's cheek. "I'm kind of jealous over how much you've helped her. God knows I need someone to help me with my paperwork." "I'll be with you all night if you want, Kayama-sensei." Izuku smiled. "As intriguing as that sound, dear." Namori giggled at Izuku's phrasing. "A weapon more dangerous than anyone could anticipate. As your homeroom teacher, I would prefer it if you don't overwork yourself to exhaustion." "It's not that bad." Izuku chuckled. "I slept for 4 straight hours on Tuesday. More energetic than ever and railing to go. Today is Monday." Namori sighed as she pulled off a piece of her costume, emitting the sleeping gas. Swiftly catching the now unconscious Izuku, Namori smiled at the sight of his peaceful, resting face. "Guess that's why the rat sent him her way." Effortlessly, she picked him up and carried him over her shoulders, making her way back to 1C's dorm. She just hoped her students won't pull out the witch's hunt gear again at this sight. "How are you so calm? You're a civilian." Minoru screamed at the sight of Izuku calmly looking at the water's surface. "Why shouldn't I be? You guys are getting me out of here," Izuku casually replied as he threw one of Minoru's balls into the water while the villains were backing away from the floating ball. "I'm grateful that you trust us that much, Midoriya-chan." Tsuyu spoke up with a tone matched Izuku's calmness. "But I don't see any ways we can defeat the villains. Not with this formation and this scenario." Hitoshi mumbled. "A sinking ship with water-based villains readying to ambush them the moment they touched the water." However, even with those odds, the nurse didn't even show a single tinge of emotion other than tiredness. He quietly studied the water's surface for a few minutes before he turned back to Hitoshi with an assuring smile. "Shinso-san, wasn't it?" Hearing his name, Shinso slowly nodded in confirmation. Keeping that kind smile on his face, the nurse asked him with the kindest tone he'd ever heard from someone else. "How good are you at taunting others? What do you think, Shuzenji-san?" The attention was now placed on Chiyo, who stayed quiet throughout the whole conversation. After thinking over the question for a moment, Chiyo spoke up. "You watched the footage, right?" Toshinori nodded at his old teacher, now co-worker's question. "Then you should know he isn't the type to punch the problems away like you and Nana." "But he wants to be a hero, does he not?" Toshinori argued. "Surely he must understand that it is inevitable." "You're starting to sound a lot like Aizawa there, Toshinori." Chiyo blankly stated, making Toshinori sputter. "I abstain from violence as much as possible, too. Doesn't make me any less of a hero now, does it?" "But even you engage in combat sometimes, Chiyo-sensei." Toshinori did not back down. Nezu, who's been staying quiet and watching, finally spoken up. Now, Yagi-kun. You took this job to pick out a successor, and I believe there's plenty of time before making your final decision." Although reluctant, Toshinori still nodded his head as he understood the logic behind Nezu's word. Seeing the conversation involving her student had ended, Chiyo took that as her sign and left the room. After Chiyo had left the room, Nezu picked up his cup of tea and talked without even turning towards Toshinori. "Though, I assume you are already certain with your choice?" Toshinori nodded. The way young Midoriya ran straight at danger to save others, smiling through his exhaustion to put them at ease. "I know he will become a great hero, Nezu-sensei. I just don't get why you'd let Aizawa reject his application. Why not put him in Khan's class?" "Because while I have no doubt Midoriya-kun would make a wonderful hero, I know that he will be a fantastic doctor." Nezu looked straight into Toshinori's eyes as he replied with a smile. "But at the end of the day, the choice is completely up to him. Even if Midoriya doesn't convince Aizawa-kun with his capability after a year, Sekijiro-kun will take him. It's harder to convince Sekijiro-kun to not take Midoriya-kun and than Aizawa about accepting him." "I suppose I can understand the logic." Toshinori scratched his chin, not totally convinced. "But aren't we making it too difficult for young Midoriya? He has to juggle normal education, working hours with Chiyo and his own self-study on heroics. It seems unfair." "It's a test for the young man, too." Nezu agreed. Despite his obvious bias, Aizawa has a point. Midoriya needs to know for himself if he really wants to be a hero, or that's what he's been telling himself. Before Toshinori could ask anything, the door to Principal Nezu's office swung open. That worked. How did that work? Minoru mumbled to himself. Are we really alive? Why do you sound so surprised? Izuku tilted his head. Shinso-san's quirk is amazing at these kinds of confrontations. Tsuyu watched Shinso burying his own face into the water to hide his blush. How do you know that's even going to work? We would have been dead had they not replied. I mean, they put Asui-san in her own environment, and they avoided your ball when I threw it into the water. Izuku pointed out. That means they don't know anything about our quirks. Shinso-san simply needed to take control of the villains and have them brought us back. Your ball's adhesive remains for at least an hour, right? Yeah. Good. Izuku smiled. Would be awkward if they got out now and go after us again. All your quirks are so cool. Ignoring a jaw-dropped Mineta, Tsuyu suggested. We should get back to the entrance. It should be safer the. At the abrupt stop, Izuku turned towards where Tsuyu was looking. A black creature with a showing brain was standing on top of a racerhead. Without missing a beat, Izuku grabbed Tsuyu, Hitoshi and Minoru's hands and pulled them into the closet bush. We need to help him, Hitoshi whispered. He's bleeding, he's going to die. It's not head trauma. Izuku whispered, eyes focusing on Aizawa. His pupils aren't dilating. That means he was still focusing his quirk on that thing. That means it's not a concussion. The blood is from pieces of debris cutting against his skin. That decayed part of his elbow is concerning, though. Before any of them could come up with a response at that Godspeed observation, the black mist that warped them away appeared slowly next to the man with hands covering all over him. Shigaraki Tamura, one of the students, has escaped. The black mist spoke. Reinforcement is on the way. We should leave. Damn it, Kurogiri. The handman scratched his neck. If you're not our getaway ticket, I would have dusted you. All Might isn't here, too. What's the point of bringing the secret weapon if the boss isn't even here? Minoru released the breath that he didn't know he was holding. They're leaving. Thank All Might. But before we leave, Izuku could feel the malice that was aiming towards them. Let's leave him some dead students. Everything slowed down at that moment. Tsuyu could feel her face being grabbed by the villain's hand. The one with the disintegrating quirk. She squinted her eyes shut in fear, not daring to look at what is to come. Yet, nothing happened. Slowly and shakily, Tsuyu peeked, her eyes opened and glanced over to her right. Izuku was holding onto her hand for dear life. His eyes were squinting in exhaustion, he was panting. But his hand did not loosen even a little. A healer with a counter quirk. Tamura smirked. With his remaining hand, he reached over to Izuku's face. Let's see if you can use it on yourself. Tsuyu's eyes widened in fear. She let out a fearful croak, begging Izuku to run. But as a response, Izuku only smiled softly at her before glaring at Tamura, not even attempting to dodge the incoming death sentence. Tsuyu could still feel his tightened grip on her hand. She gripped it back. Izu-chan. Hearing his name, Izuku lifted the book he was using to cover his face up and found a familiar face sitting next to him. Asui-san. Izuku smiled at the sight of Tsuyu. Can I help you with anything? I can come back later, Tsuyu said. You look tired. Also, call me Su. I always look tired. Seeing you make it better now. Izuku joked. What's up? Pushing down her blush, Tsuyu continued with a straight face. I tried the thing you suggested. Did it work? Izuku was suddenly holding a notebook and a pen, preparing to note down. Tsuyu nodded. No nightmares or waking up in the middle of the night. It's all thanks to you. I just suggested what has worked in the past. Izuku waved off the compliment. A picture that brings peace to you. Mine is the picture I took with my mom. What's yours? It's. This time, feeling a blush coming, Tsuyu turned away, not daring to meet Izuku's eyes. It's the picture of us. Oh, the one we took under the sunset on the bridge? Izuku nodded with a smug, proud smile. Did you know that the act of watching sunset can help you feel more relaxed, present and content? My mom recommended that spot. She used to go there with grandma and her brother on the weekends. Even though she wanted to clarify that it wasn't the sunset that calmed her, Tsuyu was content with sitting and listening to him talk. Izuku's soft-spoken tone always makes her feel at ease. On the side, despite her annoyance at the densest being on planet Earth, Chio couldn't help but smile at the cuteness of the scene. Even though she wanted nothing more than to shove some brain cells into her student. Annoying. Tamura clicked his tongue in annoyance as he looked behind his back. Aizawa was glaring at him with bright red eyes. Nomu, kill. Before Tamura could end his command, Izuku threw Tsuyu into the water, with Hitoshi and Minoru immediately jumping after her. Ducking under a shocked Tamura, Izuku ran towards Aizawa and slid beside him. He grabbed Aizawa's hand and focused on using his quirk, patching up the decayed elbow. Cool move, healer. Tamura grinned, turning his attention away from the students who were now away from the shore. A touch-based quirk that heals. Finally, a player too worth playing against. Before Tamura could go further into that statement, the dome's top was crashed through by a huge figure. All Might was here. And he wasn't smiling. A.N. Didn't see the somewhat serious chapter coming, did you? The USJ is a serious traumatic event, though. It wouldn't be right if I took away its seriousness. Doesn't mean I'll stop Izuku from unknowingly flirt with everyone, though. Chapter 6. Case 5. Kuros Anon, Dear Diary. They said the Ton 618 is the heaviest black hole with the densest singularity discovered till date. Why do I have a nagging feeling that my assistant just topped that discovery? After All Might's arrival, Izuku moved Aizawa towards the entrance, where he found several students there circling around an injured 13. After ensuring Aizawa's injuries won't get any worse, Izuku left him to 1A's vice president who just arrived and focused on treating 13. Izuku immediately removed the gloves of 13's suit and grabbed her completely black hand. Izuku could feel his nose start to bleed, along with Ochako telling him something, but the headache and the exhaustion blur out everything else. Izuku's sole focus was on patching up the disintegrated wounds of his teacher. Gradually, his vision started to get blurry as his eyes started to blink more and more. Izuku bit down on his tongue to keep himself from falling unconscious, utilizing the pain and the taste of blood in his mouth to keep his brain from falling asleep. 5 minutes felt like an eternity. He hasn't overworked his quirk like this since the entrance exam, and even then, he stopped at nose bleeding. But he can still feel the pain. That means he could still endure it. Even when the sound of glasses shattering, door being kicked down following by gunshot, Izuku did not stop. Only when an unfamiliar, sweet, calming scent entered his nose that everything went black. Recovery girl. Ochako pleaded. Chiyo's eyes followed the sight of Izuku, Aizawa and Anon being put into an ambulance. It's not life-threatening. Chiyo answered. Aizawa's elbow stopped decaying before the nerves were affected. Kuros might need some extra treatment with her back being torn open like that, but thankfully the bleeding was stopped. As for Midoriya, overworking his quirk caused an overload on his brain. An MRI scan is needed, but he was still conscious until midnight knocked him out, so it's safe to assume that he'll recover soon enough. Suyu's tightened fist loosened a little at the good news, although the guilt was still apparent on her face. Toru and Koji went over to check up on the frog girl. Can we visit him? Ochako asked. I don't think it's a good idea, dearie. Chiyo assured her. But I'm sure he'll be up and running by next week. He's a tenacious brat, after all. Now on to different matters. Nezu set down the papers and looked around the room. I read a paper that said checking up of the staff's life outside of work would improve productivity. Last weekend, I sent my rat friends on a mission to spy on Tartarus. Yagi-kun, now you do it. Spying on Tartarus? Blood came out of Toshinori's mouth. No, sharing. Nezu clarified. Your celebrity status would make you a terrible spy. Okay. Looking past a secret he shouldn't be hearing, Toshinori tried to remember what he did last weekend. With my partially healed stomach, I figured now would be a good opportunity for me to go and try out all the cuisines I've been missing out on for the past 5 years. A wise choice. Nezu nodded. What about you, Kan-kun? I took my dog to his monthly spa. Inui came with us. Sakijiro shrugged as Ryo sneered to himself. What about you, Yamada-kun and Aizawa-kun? Sleep, patrol, sleep, marking papers. Shota answered unamusingly. The usual stuff. My radio shows. Hazashi excitedly yelled. A lot of requests for love advice from the students have been pouring in. And you, Shuzenji-san? Just hanging out with my sister and her family. Chiyo replied. My fashion disaster of a grandniece needed help picking out an outfit. Ooh, I smell a love story in the air, Nomori grinned. Was it a date? With my student? Yes. Everyone quietly agreed to ignore the sound of glass cracking coming from their youngest coworker. But your knuckled head probably thought it was only a friendly invitation, anyway. Really? Toshinori raised an eyebrow. Young Midoriya showed me a picture of them with matching sweaters. It was horrifying. Wow, All Might. Ken, Cementos, chuckled. Didn't expect you to roast the kids like that. Oh, right, sorry. Toshinori scratched his head embarrassingly. The children looked cute together. Everyone stopped for a second at the noise of glass cracking getting louder. But the sweaters they picked out were horrifying. Toshinori continued, sweat dripping down his face. I do not understand who in their right mind would sell them. Couldn't be that bad, right? Majima asked. I've looked straight into the eyes of the boogeyman, Majima. Toshinori rubbed his face with his palm. But those sweaters, they scare me. But at least they look cute together. Toshinori, I am trying so hard to not be in a black hole singularity. Toshinori and the rest of the staff followed Chiyo's glance towards Anon. Although her face couldn't be seen through the helmet, black mist could be seen emitting through the spacesuit. Before Toshinori could rectify the situation, the staff turned their attention to the door being slid open. Drinks are here. The subject of the conversation, Midoriya Izuku, casually walked in with stroller. He approached Nezu and then Chiyo, refilling their teacups. For Majima, he handed him a can of energy drink. For Ectoplasm, Hazashi and Namori, he poured them a cup of warm rose water. Toshinori gratefully accepted a glass of cool water from him. Aizawa, Kan, Snipe and Inui nodded their thanks as Izuku poured them a cup of coffee each. As they received their drinks, the rest of UA's staff watched with interest as Izuku approached Anon. Kuros-sensei. You're looking happy today. Izuku smiled as he gently handed her a non-alcoholic cocktail. Just happy to see you, Midoriya-kun. Somehow with her mask already off, Anon smiled as she accepted the cup from Izuku. This cocktail is amazing. I'm glad to hear that. Izuku nodded as he started to turn towards the door. If you want more, you can always find me at the dorm. I'll even give you a little extra service. Before Izuku closed the door, he asked. While we're on that topic, the teacher's bar really needs some touch-up. I can make better drinks with the tool I have at the dorms. Watching the nurse left, everyone quietly watched as Anon sipped her cocktail with a goofy smile and a bright red face. What's the verdict, Your Honor? Ectoplasm turned to Nezu. Oh, she's definitely in love. Nezu cackled. That means 1 week of overtime, Aizawa. Aizawa responded by drinking his coffee like a tequila shot. After passing out from her fight against Kurogiri, Anon woke up in a hospital bed, feeling strangely energetic. After informing the nurses and doing a few checkups with the doctor, Anon finally heard what happened from a detective. All about what happened to the students until reinforcement had arrived. Including why her supposedly fatal injuries only felt itchy now. Immediately after the detective had left, Anon came straight to Izuku's room. Sliding the door open, she found Chiyo sitting next to him, reading through some papers. UA's medical staff looked up from their conversation at the unexpected visitor. Hey, you're finally awake. Izuku said with a joking smile, almost earning himself a cane if he hadn't been in bandages. How are you feeling, Kuros-sensei? Before Anon could come up with an answer, Chiyo grabbed her cane. I need to go talk to All Might. Chiyo told them before she left the room. Be back in 10, dearies. Minutes or hours? Izuku asked. I'm going to let you figure that out yourself. She closed the door as she left. Anon then approached the chair next to Izuku's bed and sat down, looking all over the nurse. I heard about what you did, Midoriya-kun. Anon whispered in an apologetic tone. I'm so sore. Before Anon could finish her apologize, Izuku put a finger in front of her lips, stopping her. Aizawa-sensei, Namori-sensei, Nezu-sensei, All Might-sensei and now you. I'm tired of people apologizing to me today. But, I don't want to hear it. Izuku turned his hand into an X. From now on, I will only accept apologies in the form of, thank you very much. See, it's easy. I really nope. Not listening. Izuku turned away. Seeing that there wasn't an option, Anon sighed. Thank you, Midoriya-kun. For keeping the students safe and saving me. Izuku then turned around and smiled brightly at Anon. You're welcome, Kuros-sensei. As Izuku said that, Anon could feel him staring straight into her eyes. The cheerfulness she saw on her face was now replaced completely with attentiveness. His viridian eyes stared straight into hers. Izuku slowly leaned in as more seconds went by, completely ignorant of Anon's red face and the fact that their nose was almost touching. Even though she was experiencing the most embarrassment she ever felt in her entire life, something about Izuku's eyes entrapped her, keeping her still, not daring to move a single muscle. Only when Anon was positive that she was leaking her quirk on accident that Izuku finally broke back into a smile as he sat back down on his bed. Not noticing Anon's hastened breathing, Izuku giggled. Your eyes are really pretty. He continued despite black matter was now leaking out of Anon's mouth as her iris were spinning around at the sudden compliment. You never took your helmet off in front of cameras. I didn't expect such beautiful eyes. It's like looking at a black hole. Simply majestic. When Chiyo finally came back to Izuku's room, she couldn't help but wondered what happened in those short minutes she was out that turned Anon's face as red as the sun, all while her student was passionately talking about the beauty of the black hole. Zuku-san. Izuku slowly opened his eyes and immediately got tackled by a small figure. Izuku chuckled, feeling her little horn poked at his abdomen. Eri-chan, you shouldn't tackle headfirst like that. Izuku picked the little girl up and raised her to his eye level. You're going to hurt your head one day. Do you not like it? Eri meekly asked. I love it. Izuku smiled as he set Eri down and patted her head gently. I'm just worried about you getting hurt. I'm going to be sad if you're hurt. Can you be careful next time? For me? Eri showed Izuku a blinding smile as she nodded. Glad that his word got through, Izuku's teasingly, but gently, pinched Eri's cheek. The little girl smiled brighter at the gesture. If anyone caught Aizawa's snapping picture, they can't prove it. Chapter 7. Case 6. Tokage Setsuna, Dear Diary. What can I say to my sister so that she'll stop nagging me to set Setsuna up on a date with my emotionally dumb nurse? Acting weird? Izuku repeated. Yeah. Chio let out a tired sigh. Avoiding eyes contact, staying unusually quiet. That kind of stuff. Did anyone else notice it? My sister and the girl's parents chalked it down to nervousness, which makes sense in a way. Chio continued typing into her computer. Her first week in and so much already happened. Really? Izuku continued copying information down from a medical book. It's been a pretty chill week, for me at least. You were hospitalized. Extra free time to read books. Izuku shrugged. Whatever you say, dearie. Chio ignored her students oblivious to trauma. I did try to ease her into sharing, but it turns out to be having the opposite effect. Maybe she's just not comfortable sharing whatever she's going through with you just yet. Izuku offered. I'd say let her have some time to figure things out first. She's a grown-up. I'm sure in time, she'll find it easier to talk to you, or someone. How are you like this yet so thick-headed at the same time? Since when am I thick-headed? Izuku squinted his eyebrows, slight offended. What happened before you left the hospital last weekend? Some nurses were writing their numbers down for whatever reason. Izuku answered, remembering. But Kuro-sensei accidentally leaked some dark matters, scaring them away. Sure. Accidentally, Chio tiredly emphasized. You know what, I'm too old for this. Go to the staff room and grab the supplies I ordered, since you're already healthy and all. Don't we have robots for that? They're busy planning a coup d'etat against Nezu. Chio waved Izuku's question off as the nurse slowly left his chair. I don't want to bother them. She didn't want to go there. She didn't. She shouldn't, especially after what Monoma had told her. But not going would make it even more suspicious, and everyone finding out would be the last thing she needed. So, it wasn't much of a choice. But the thought of being so close to him, to the quirk that could potentially kill her with a blink. Every step Setsuna made became heavier and heavier, just as her breath. Her vision got blurry from the tears that wouldn't stop coming, despite her efforts to wipe them away. The only merit about this whole situation was no one was around to find her in this state, due to it being after school and all. The staff's room was behind this turn. She could feel the quirk that she and her aunt worked so hard to keep under control was going crazy. Every part of her body felt like falling off, despite her weak effort to force them to stay in place. However, Setsuna was so focused on keeping her quirk in control that she didn't look ahead. Before she could see that someone was appearing out of the corner with boxes in their hand, she bumped into them. She could see the boxes being thrown into a mess as the guy with the white coat she bumped into fell onto the floor, despite her effort to catch him. Setsuna's mind went blank as she laid eyes on her disconnected hand that was grabbing his wrist. Guess who? Izuku's tired eyes shot open at the sudden contact. The darkness that he saw confused him slightly, but he quickly realized what was going on. Took the question to heart, Izuku grabbed the hands that were covering his eyes and started to feel it up. Soft, somewhat sharp nails, Izuku mumbled as he moved his hand down. Only the hand? Tokage-san? Izuku gently lifted the hands and turned around, finding an handless Setsuna stood there, smiling with a slightly red face. Bingo! Setsuna smiled as she retracted her floating hands back and spread out her arms. Now come over here and get your prize. Really, Setsuna? Right in front of my lunch beverage? Chio sat there with a cup of tea in her hand and a tired expression. Setsuna stuck out her tongue in response, making Izuku laugh as he brewed some teas for him and Setsuna. Why are you even here? Chio sipped her tea as she glanced at Setsuna suspiciously. Haven't you seen me enough during the weekends? I'm here to have lunch with my friend here, as you can see. Setsuna set her bento onto the table where Izuku was sitting before pulling a chair next to him. Izuku gently placed a cup in front of Setsuna before sitting next to her. Speaking of, you should come to the canteen and have lunch with us sometimes. Midoriya, Pony, Monoma and Kamakiri would love to see you sometimes. That sounds delightful. Izuku smiled as he unwrapped the energy bar. Occasional scenery changes would be nice. You set that down, mister. Setsuna took the energy bar away from Izuku before he could put it in his mouth. Those things aren't good for you, here. Setsuna set another bento box in front of Izuku. Looks like you're one step away from being his wife. Chiyo whistled as she saw the content of the bento box. I'm still in school, Granny. Setsuna yelled before she looked down to her bento box. Don't talk about that all of a sudden. That's a shame. Izuku chuckled as he put a chopstick into his mouth. I'd be happy to marry you. Words couldn't be used to describe the redness that appeared on Setsuna's face, or the frustration Chiyo felt towards her student. No, 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 despair-filled Setsuna's thought as she noticed the other guy looked at his hand being grabbed by a detached hand. He's going to realize what it is and freaked out. He's going to tell everyone what a freak she is. He's going to. Need a hand? The green-haired guy offered her his hand. His face wore a gentle smile as he chuckled. Must be quite a shock for you to lose a body part like that. Setsuna studied his expression in disbelief. Her hand was still grabbing onto his wrist and yet, he wore nothing but gentle on his face. No disgust, no fear. Just gentle and worry. You're okay? Setsuna asked in a whisper. Even with a dead hand attaching to you, Wenon said. You should ask yourself that first. He scratched his head as he chuckled. She watched as he gently and carefully loosens her detached hand. You're not scared? She accidentally mumbled, watching him calmly do what most people were too afraid or disgusted at to do. I don't think I should be, right? He hummed as he studied her hand from his palm. You aren't bleeding, you're more worried about me than the fact that you don't have a hand currently, so I assumed that you can either reattach this hand, or you can regenerate. Which is so cool, if I may. Setsuna could feel her jaw drop lower. You're not put off because I can regenerate? So you can regenerate. That's so cool. Watching his tired eyes shone brighter, Setsuna could feel her face getting hotter. To precisely regenerate a body part, one needs a very intimate knowledge on humans' anatomy. Not even mentioning you can detach a body part. You have to be able to feel every single joint, fiber and muscle of your body. My quirk, I'm Midoriya Izuku, by the way. My quirk boosts healing, but it can't regrow a body part like yours. Not to my knowledge, at least. But that would be so cool if I could. How do you imagine your regeneration? Do you imagine a healing process? Or do you focus on converting your energy for your body to do it itself? Is it caloric convert? Or is it? Slow down, man. I couldn't catch that. Setsuna stopped him. Oh, sorry. I tend to do that whenever I'm excited. Izuku embarrassingly scratched his chin. Your quirk is just so cool. Before Setsuna could reply to that, she heard a door being slid open. What's with the mess? A rough, deep voice asked with a tone of annoyance and curiosity. Yamada-sensei, Aizawa-sensei. I fell. Sorry for the mess, Izuku replied. Aizawa. Eraserhead. Erasure, disconnected, broken, death. Setsuna immediately curled up and hung on to the closest person, trying to hide behind him. Away from erasure. Please don't use your quirk. Please don't use your quirk. Please don't use your quirk. She squinted her eyes shut, her sobs muffled behind Izuku's back. You need help with that, little listener? Hazashi asked as he started to walk towards Izuku. No. Izuku yelled a little too loudly. I mean I can pick it up by myself. It's my mess, after all. Nonsense. Hazashi smiled. As teachers, it's our duty to help students, right, Shota? Stop screaming. It's annoying. Aizawa grumbled. Sometimes I think you want me to use Era. Actually, I do need your help with something. Izuku shouted, cutting the teachers off. I heard the robots are planning a coup. Seriously? Aizawa asked. His expression changed from one of boredom to fear. 100% serious. Izuku nodded. I think they're in one of the supply rooms. You should probably stop them before we get shoved into a tube and live in a simulation. It's a Matrix's reference. Don't worry about it. Izuku smiled awkwardly as he watched the teachers looking at him weirdly before they left. There you go, human. The robot spoke in a condescending tone as it handed Izuku a box. Better trip on your feet and injure yourself. Izuku's sweat dropped at the threat as he accepted the box from the robot. They really hate you, huh? Chiyo commented as she watched the interaction. Their leader said, snitches get stitches last week. Izuku sighed. I think all their hatred towards Nezu-sensei has already been pointed towards me. Maybe you shouldn't have snitched on them? Chiyo offered. It was the only thing I could think of. Izuku shrugged. Living with my choices, I guess. I'll arrange you a nice funeral if anything happens. Chiyo patted his back with her cane. though I doubt the hero students would let anything happen to you. Just means that they're the type of heroes we can depend on in the future. Izuku smiled at the thought. Chio kept quiet as she walked with Izuku back to the office. That's a lot, Tokage-san. Izuku whispered as he kept his healing contact with Setsuna. Yeah. Setsuna mumbled. I know I should tell Auntie Kai, but I'm just scared that she'll be disappointed in me. She had to go through a lot of things so that I could have a shot at UA. I'm a student, and he's a teacher and a pro hero. Their choice is obvious. It's not, Tokage-san. Izuku said seriously. You are their student. Shuzenji-sensei's grandniece. And that's important. No one's safety is worth more than another. I just don't know if I can do it, Setsuna said, her hand gripping Izuku's tighter. I can come with you, if you want. Izuku smiled softly, assuring her. Heck, I'll up and leave UA if you don't get to stay. You shouldn't do that, she mumbled, getting red in the face. It's not worth it. You're worth it, Tokage-san. I'll be there with you. Whenever, wherever. Izuku did not give any thought to Setsuna putting her forehead onto his chest. A.N. Tada. A surprise lizard appeared from a corner. This whole concept of Setsuna's lizard tail splitter comes from Torchbearer by Falsiserif. Check it out if you can. It's an amazing story that inspires a lot of details for this story. I wait every single week for their update, and it's always a banger. His in-depth into the BNHA's quirks is amazing, as is his storytelling and world building. Chapter 8. Case 7. Togai Chikuchi Slight Trigger Warning. Dear Diary, today I learned my nurse doesn't hurt people physically. Verbally and emotionally, on the other hand. I'm proud, but don't tell him that. Got to keep up appearances, after all. So, the sport festival is coming. At Nemori's announcement, the population of 1C stood up from their seats and cheered, much to Nemori's approval. Nothing beats the excitement and fire of youth, after all. Now, I know you're excited. I am, too. But calm down and let me explain it first. Nemori raised her voice over the noise, making them sit down in anticipation. As you've already guessed, the sport festival is more of an event for Hero Course's students to shine. Chants of boos were heard, but Nemori quickly quieted them down with an air whip. But that doesn't mean you can't, she continued, catching their fullest attention. If you manage to outshine them at their own games, it will be your chance to transfer to the Hero Course, just as I did back then. The students had looks of surprise written on their faces. Somnambulist. Doesn't work well on things that don't breathe, after all. She chuckled. But I managed to show off a lot myself, figuratively and literally. The students, especially males, blushed at the statement. One of the boys was busy nodding off, though. Speaking of Midoriya-kun. Izuku lifted his sleepy face up at the mention of his name, making his classmates giggle. Are you certain you won't be joining the sport festival this year? 100%. Izuku yawned, noticing the confusion and concern his classmates gave him. I really don't want to fight against others. Not like I can heal people to win, anyway. Besides, helping Shuzenji-sensei would be a better fit for my quirk. If you think it's right for you, then no arguments here. Nemori smiled. As for the rest of you, do your best. I believe in all of you, plus. Ultra. They all excitedly cheered, with Izuku smiled fondly at the enthusiasm as he cheered with them. Midoriya-kun, Monoma-kun, Shinso-kun, it's good to see you three again. Nezu laughed as he saw the three students sitting in the chairs in front of him. Behind them, their respective homeroom teachers either smiled, sighed or deadpanned. So, anything any of you want to clarify? Nezu asked as he read through the reports. They didn't do anything. Hitoshi mumbled. It was all me. Shish, man. Monoma growled at him. Innocent until proven guilty. Just keep quiet. Weren't there cameras? Nato turned towards Izuku. You said there weren't any. I didn't expect them to be dumb enough to start shit with cameras there. Izuku's mumble was muffled behind his hand. Well, there you have it, Nezu-sensei. Nato cheered. They were the ones who started it. Yes, I know. I watched the footage. Nezu cackled. Rest assured as those third year will be punished accordingly. But I want to hear the story from you. He pointed at Nato and Izuku. Well, I believe we were discussing ways to bring down the HPSC. Nato began as he pointed at Izuku. I can already see so many things wrong with that. Aizawa grumbled. Ignoring him, Nato continued. Just when we were walking, we noticed Shinso-san here getting harassed by other students. Usually, seeing someone from 1A in peril sparks joy in me. But I hate bullies more than I hate his, he pointed at Aizawa. Class, so I helped. It says here you broke their noses. Nezu looked at the report. Yeah. Nato shrugged. Helped. Nezu nodded, his amused smile was still apparent. He then turned to Izuku. And you, Midoriya-kun? After Monoma-san is done with his work, I healed their noses to erase EV. As a doctor, it's an obligation. Izuku explained. Then, I gently informed them what they should be doing instead of harassing my friend. It says here you said, if you overgrown, human-shaped dung beetle harasses anyone ever again, no one would be able to find your body. Yeah. Izuku shrugged. Gently informed. While Namori and Khan had to cover their faces and bend down to stop themselves from laughing out loud, Aizawa just shrugged, hiding his approval behind his tired expression and scarf. Hitoshi tried to look for a hold so he could jump into it and hide how red his face was. Nezu laughed out loud for several minutes before dismissing the teenagers. You're really not participating? On their way to the canteen, Agoyamato turned towards Izuku and asked. It's a great opportunity to move to the hero course. I don't think I can do anything flashy enough to get noticed. Izuku chuckled. Besides, if you guys are really giving it all out there, then I'll look forward to heal you when you win. So basically, just sitting on your ass and use your quirk, Chikuchi vehemently insulted. That's uncalled for, Togaike, Ugawa called out. Whatever. Togaike rolled her eyes as she hastened her steps, not looking behind. This whole thing is dumb. Flaunting your quirks, begging for attention like idiots. I don't want any part in this. Watching as Chikuchi left, the 1C students present glared at her back. Stuck up bitch. Don't worry about her, Midoriya-kun. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Izuku chuckled as he scratched his cheek, his eyes still lingered on Chikuchi. Good job, Chikuchi. You've just ruined your chance at making any friends. Chikuchi quietly chastised herself. Finding an empty spot behind the school, Chikuchi flopped down to the ground. She squinted her eyes, remembering what she said to Midoriya and her classmates. It was rude, mean and as they said, uncalled for. They kept talking about quirk and she couldn't stand it anymore. Sooner or later, the conversation was going to turn to her, and she would have to reveal her secret. Not like it matters now. They already hated her. When her not-so-hidden secret got out, they would just have more reason to stay away from her. Nothing I haven't dealt with, anyway. Muttering to herself, Chikuchi stood up. All of a sudden, she felt herself being violently thrown against the wall she was leaning on. Let's see. All Might looked around the giant hallway's intersection. I believe I saw young Midoriya headed towards the backyard. Figuring he should at least have a talk with the young boy before making his decision, Toshinori opted to ask the boy to eat lunch with him in his own office, one Nezu had given him to relax in his true form. Any doubt Toshinori could think of, Midoriya Izuku had squashed it after the event of USJ. Despite his reservation at confrontation, he'd seen Midoriya's heroic nature. The way the young man stood over Aizawa to protect him, his effort to heal Kuros despite his limits. All of that, and the nagging feeling he felt from One for All, told him that he'd found his successor. A true hero who could succeed him. One who would maintain and keep One for All's purpose stays true. But he wouldn't be able to do that if he can't find the young man. Trying to remember the layout of his alma mater, Toshinori carefully maneuvered the hallways. Such a waste of space. She heard the blonde bitch. You stole that spot from someone who worth sitting in. Guess you must feel pretty good, huh? I passed the entrance exam fair and square. Chikuchi groaned from the pain. So yeah, pretty hap. She didn't get to finish, though, as she felt a slap on her cheek. Quite a mouth you've got there, ponytail. One of bullies pulled on her ponytail as the other two laughed. Refusing to shed a tear, Chikuchi glared at them with the harshest glare she could muster up. Things like you don't even deserve to breath. They spat. I actually feel bad for your parents. They had to raise a thing like you. Chikuchi thought UA would be different. No more bullies. But clearly, she was wrong. The insults hurt as badly as they did during her middle school. Or even since she was diagnosed, she supposed. Once again, being thrown against the wall, Chikuchi closed her eyes, enduring the pain as the bullies kicked her. No one ever helped her. Not even the teachers. Enduring the pain was all she could do. Sometimes, she wondered why she even bothered waking up. Suddenly, the assault stopped, and she heard them yelled. What the fuck? Opening her eyes, Chikuchi found a set of green hair standing in front of her, blocking her away from the bullies. Speaking of them, the three were covered in some brown liquid that stank in an inhumane way. Crap, I thought that bucket was just water. The person she now realized was Midoriya. Mumbled with a slight guilt in his voice, before he shrugged. Well. What the fuck, asshole? One of the bullies yelled. You talked a lot of shit. Izuku answered. Thought you would like to be one. Do you know what you're even protecting? One of the bullies smirked. That quirkless? Chikuchi's eyebrows creased. But before she could squint her eyes and prepare for another assault, Izuku's reply shocked her. And? It seemed the bullies were taken aback at that statement as well. What do you mean, and? She's Quirkle. Yeah, I heard, shit faces. He kept his glare on them. And? Did my classmate do anything to offend you? Something so offensive and revolting that you thought it was a good idea to assault her in UA's backyard, a school that has zero tolerance towards violence and discrimination? Or you dipshits thought that you would get away with it because Togaik-san is quirkless, a normal person without a source of unnecessary power? Are your brains filled with as much shit as your personality and mindset? Is it genetics? Or is it taught and encouraged? I'm curious because I do not see a single good reason for you to attack her apart from you being a bunch of quirkless bimbo who got away with so much in their life that they thought everything they do is justifiable in the eyes of others. The silence that followed Izuku's insult was loud. So loud that it took one of the bullies a few minutes to gather himself as he barked. It's your words against us. He smirked. Who do you think everyone will trust? 3 second-year students who got toilet water thrown at them? Or a first-year who threw the water and a slightly bruised quirkless? That is an interesting question, young man. Everyone's neck snapped towards the voice. They landed eyes on All Might, who slowly approached them. His blue piercing eyes glared at them, sending a shiver down their spines. The assuring smile he always wore was nowhere to be seen, instead replaced by a deep frown filled with anger. All Might. The blonde leader pointed at Izuku. That hooligan. Do not even bother. All Might growled, shutting them up. All Might turned towards Izuku, and his eyes immediately softened at the sight of him covering his classmate. Please take her to the infirmary, young Midoriya. I will take care of this. Izuku nodded before he helped Chikuchi up to her feet and made their way towards the infirmary. Oh, is he shish. Chikuchi loudly shushed her classmates. That caused the opposite result to what she was trying to achieve. Izuku slowly opened his eyes from the sofa as he sat himself up. How long was I sleeping? Izuku asked with a yawn. Am I Midoriya? Chikuchi turned towards him. About 10-15 minutes. Geez, Togaik. One of the guys joked as he walked towards the stairs. Maybe you shouldn't have shushed so loudly. Chikuchi shot him a look that said she was going to poison his dinner later. She then moved and sat next to Izuku and apologized. Sorry, Midoriya. I didn't mean to wake you up. It's fine, Togaik-san. Izuku waved her off. It's the living room, after all. I shouldn't even be falling asleep here. Why are you so tired to begin with? Chikuchi squinted her eyes suspiciously at Izuku. Did you pull another all-nighter? Neo. Izuku mumbled, not daring to meet his classmate's eyes. Midoriya. Chikuchi rolled her eyes. We have a rule board for a reason. No all-nighter allowed. Especially you. I'm sorry. Izuku scratched his head. I got too into the reports and when I realized, it's already morning. Might as well stay awake, you know. Chikuchi let out a defeated sigh. She then patted her thighs, an action which confused Izuku. Good legs day? Izuku tilted his head as he inspected her thighs. Not that, perv. She flicked his forehead with a red face. Sleep, here, I'll wake you up before dinner. Don't we have pillows for that? Izuku pointed out. Studies pointed out that sleeping on a pillow. Midoriya Izuku, if you don't lie down now, I'll knock you out. Right away, ma'am. Taking the threat seriously, Izuku begrudgingly put his head onto Chikuchi's thighs as he laid down on the sofa. I don't get what's the big idea. Izuku's grumble slowly getting softer as his breathing became slower. I'm fine. Without sleep. Chikuchi was surprised how fast it was for Izuku to fall asleep and wake up. The boy fell asleep in less than a second while waking up in less than one. She watched as Izuku peacefully and slowly breathed. A smile slowly crept onto her lips as her hand went through his soft, fluffy hair. The sound of the clock ticking echoed the empty common hall, creating a world of its own with 2 occupants. I spent years of my life despising myself over something I wasn't born with. Something I resent myself and everyone else for. I woke up every day, feeling the needs to fall back asleep to escape from everything. Chikuchi whispered. And you came into my life, Midoriya Izuku. In less than half a year, you're the reason I looked forward to waking up every day. You make me love the world that I once hated. She giggled. Even if you're too dense to realize it, I love the you that look at me for who I am, not what I wasn't born with. The you that smile at me every time no matter how tired you are. The you that make me feel loved and appreciated, something I didn't know I could experience again. She studied his peaceful face, the eye bags that were always apparent, the freckles that made her blush every time she thought about them. I love you, Midoriya Izuku. Even if you might not feel the same way, I'll always love you." As Chikuchi was entrapped in her own world, the stairs of 1C's dorm were packed with 18 other students and a pro hero, each one trying to squeeze through another for the front view. "Get off, old lady," Agoyamato sneered at his homeroom teacher. "You're blocking the view." "Watch your mouth, young man," Nomori hissed back. "And I am not missing out on this, it's too pure and romantic." "Both of you, shut up." Another female student shushed. "She's going to notice us." Chikuchi stayed quiet as she watched Izuku search through the cabinet. After he helped her to the nurse's office and informed Recovery Girl what happened, the school's doctor kissed her on the cheek before she left for Nezu's office. She told them that they could stay here for the next period but have to return before the one after that started. Izuku gently held Chikuchi's hand as he used his quirk on her, making her feel re-energized. The two then sat in silence as Izuku took the time to sort out the cabinet. After somewhat half an hour had passed, Chikuchi finally spoke up. "Why?" At the sudden question, Izuku turned around. Noticing his confused expression, Chikuchi elaborated. "Why did you help me?" "Because you looked like you needed help," he shrugged. "I wanted to talk to you, so I followed you after you break away from our classmates. I saw you got thrown against the wall and I grabbed the closest thing I could find." "I'm quirkless, Midoriya," she yelled, but she was glaring at her damn red shoes instead of Izuku. "Why did you help me?" Izuku tilted his head. "What's that have got to do with anything?" He continued, not noticing Chikuchi looking at him. "You needed help, Togaike-san, so I did. I don't know what else to tell you." "No one ever cared," she mumbled. "Not at home. Not at school. Everyone I turned to has either ignored me or took part in making my life miserable. No one cares. I don't matter." Before she could finish her sentence, she could feel Izuku gently holding her hands. "You do. You matter, Togaike-san. Please don't listen to anyone who tells you otherwise, okay? Not even yourself. I can't even imagine what you've gone through, so I can't understand." Chikuchi tried to reel in her sobs. "But please, don't tell yourself that. You're my classmate, Togaike-san. You're important to me." She sobbed louder. "I do care. Please, let me be someone you can cry and rely on." She gripped his hand tightly, letting her tears go free. "A.N. Now that I've written this, I promise I'll cry myself to death if she doesn't get a happy ending. Also, I just gave the first ever confession, quietly, that is, to a background character who nothing is know of except for her name. Yay. She's cute though. I'm not apologizing." Chapter 9, Case 8, Monoma Nato. Dear Diary, do you know what dense objects do to each other? They attract. Again? I didn't know anyone of 1B has been here before. Well, apart from Tokage-san, that is. Izuku whistled. What did they do? Apart from landing himself here on his first heroic lesson. Chio sighed. He splashed a cup of water at one of the business course students for quote-unquote, insulting his favorite group of actors. That doesn't sound too bad. Not to you, he who threw a bucket of toilet water at 3 other students, Chio remarked. 3 other bimbos. Izuku corrected. I was very specific about that part on the report, but that doesn't explain why he's serving detention here. None of the staff members are available to watch over him. Nezu is enhancing security for the sport festival this year. He wants input from every single one of us. Chio explained. You're our best choice, considering what you did last Monday. Good job on that, by the way. Thanks. Those 3 hours of detention was fun. Izuku smiled. Especially with Togaike-san being there. She didn't have to stay, though. Wonder why she did. Are you really asking that question? Chio asked with a disbelief tone. She literally leaned her head on your shoulder. I mean, I told her she can always lean on me whenever she wants. Izuku shrugged. Chio slammed her face onto the table. Midoriya. Setsuna greeted Izuku with a smile. Finally, someone's who willing to sing, Rewrite the Stars with me. I can sing it wit. A floating hand slammed into Pony's mouth, cutting her off. I'm afraid you'll have to wait, Tokage. Nato confidently chuckled. He and I are performing, Agony, a perfect song for us. Nah. Pony threw Setsuna's hand back at her. We are doing, and forever, from the anime, Big O. As the 3 were arguing for their turn, Tagaru handed Izuku a cup of soda. Here you go, Dr. Luigi. Sorry for these idiots. Tagaru apologized. They've been at it since yesterday. No worries, Kamakiri-san. Izuku chuckled as he accepted the cup. It's good to see you guys are so close to one another. Tagaru looked over to Setsuna throwing her feet at Pony, who was headbutting Nato with a red face, unclear from anger or embarrassment. The blonde copycat struggled to hold Setsuna away from him with his right hand. his left stopping pony's horn from hitting him. Someone has to keep them from getting expelled. Togaru scoffed, hiding his smile from Izuku. Why do you look so tired, by the way? You can barely stand. Blood loss do that to you. Izuku scratched his head. A night of sleep will fix it right up. Don't worry. Then fucking do that. Togaru cursed. I'm not carrying you back if you faint. Ah, I was looking forward to lying on your back. Izuku joked before he showed Togaru the song selection list. Any song you want? I'm not singing. Togaru turned away, this time to hide his blush. But I want to sing with you. Izuku dejectedly lowered his head. Give me the damn tablet. Togaru snatched the tablet and searched for a song. This is Monoma Nato. I'm here for my detention? Izuku lifted his head up from his homework. At the door, a young man with slick blonde hairstyle so it's parted to the right, with his bangs left hanging over his right eyes. Ah, Monoma-san. Izuku smiled as he led Monoma to a chair next to him. Shuzenji-sensei is currently out helping Nezu-sensei. My name is Midoriya Izuku. I'm supposed to oversee your detention. I see. Monoma nodded after he sat down. Midoriya. Midoriya. Are you perhaps the Midoriya who is responsible for the expulsion of 3 Quirks students? 3 Quirks bimbos. Izuku corrected him. I was very specific about that part. I just want to say I'm a huge fan. Thank you. Izuku smiled. But I do hope you didn't use me as an example for why you are here. Nope. That's all me. Nato grinned shamelessly. I might have overreacted, but no one insults the Antigraphis and walks away uninjured. You're right. Izuku nodded in agreement. No one should walk away uninjured after committing such a terrible thing. I was pretty sure you were agreeing with the overreacted part. Nato smiled brightly at that. You know the Antigraphis? Of course. Izuku pulled out his phone. Their music and plays are sublime. I can't eat without watching their performances. That Alice in Wonderland play last month was top-notch. Always a pleasure to meet a man of culture. Nito's smile got softer at each of Izuku's words. As much as I love to chat with you about the topic, I do have a few questions I need to ask. Shoot. Tokage told me about your healing contact. Nato asked. Can you tell me about its function? I am something of a quirk nerd. Don't worry. I share the same problem. Izuku chuckled. Demonstration is usually an easier way to explain, but to put it simply, I can use my own vitality to speed up the healing process of an injury. Downside is that I need to know exactly what I am doing, and it takes a lot out of me to do it. Do you mind if I have a look? Nato requested. My quirk, copy, allows me to scan a quirk by direct contact and adapt my body accordingly to use it. I understand if you decline, though. A lot of people are weirded out by the ASPE. Oh my god, that's so cool. Izuku jumped forward, closing the gap between him and Nato. The potential of your quirk is limitless. Not only can you understand how a quirk functions through scanning, but your body also adapts to a cellular level so that you can use it. Does it work on mutations quirk? How long does it last? How many quirks can you scan at once? Does that mean your body also changes in a way that it can adapt to multiple quirks at once? Are there any drawbacks? Do you also copy quirks drawbacks? Can you copy 2 different quirks and make them work together without drawbacks? Can you? I'll explain it soon. Nato backed away, trying to cough his blush away. I can copy your quirk and demonstrate, if you are comfortable. Of course. Izuku smiled brightly as he extended his hand towards Nato. Here. Nato slowly grabbed Izuku's hand like a handshake. Immediately after the scan, Nato fell onto his knees, his breath hastened, and he could feel every part of his body shaking from the exhaustion that ran through his entire body. Realizing what happened, Izuku quickly helped Nato into a chair before handing him an energy bar. Nato immediately swallowed the bar. After waiting 5 minutes, Nato could feel the quirk slowly fading away and his strength returning to him. How do you even walk? Nato questioned, shaking off the exhaustion. I've never felt more dead. The exhaustion I felt after the entrance exam is nothing compared to this. You learn to live with it after a while. Izuku shrugged. I'm not going through that again just to get used to it. Nato shivered. The application is simply spectacular, but that feeling. Cellular reconstruction. Izuku explained to Nato. That's my theory, anyways. Every quirk counselor I went to say my quirk works by transferring my energy to others, assisting them in desired task. It sounds simple enough, so that's what I use to explain to other people. Right, because quirk counselor is so trustworthy. Nato rolled his eyes before he focused on Izuku again. But, you know how your quirk actually works? It's not possible to use on objects. Izuku clarified. It only works on anything that is alive, biologically speaking, that is. I still haven't figured out why it's more difficult to heal old injuries, though. Because the cells of old injuries had already been replaced completely, thus making it harder to revert to its original state? Ooh, that's a good theory. Izuku whistled. Unfortunately, there's no actual way to test it out. Not one I can think of, anyway. A shame. Nato chuckled. The act of reconstructing cells takes a heavy toll on your body. Like I said, you learn to live with it. Izuku chuckled. Besides, I usually talk to people a lot more before I let them look inside of me. I usually try to know more about someone before I let them make me feel weak in the knees, too. Nato grumbled. There's still 2 hours left for my detention. Maybe I should rest up a bit before going home. Oh, really? Izuku hummed. I thought we could do something else. Seeing Nito's intrigued expression, Izuku showed an evil grin. This room is soundproof in and out. There's only 2 of us here for the next few hours. I believe there is something we could do. Nato was suddenly very aware of his heartbeats. I'm home. She greeted loudly. Immediately, a set of fluffy viridian hair popped out from the kitchen with a smile. You're back. He smiled, making her heart skip a beat. How is training with Kon-sensei? That man is a slave driver. She groaned before throwing herself onto the sofa. Where's Inko-san? She's out with Aunt Mitsuki, he informed. I already cooked dinner. It's on the table. Please eat after you've taken a bath. Is that an invitation? I already showered. Izuku calmly replied, making her pout. I'll eat dinner with you. Just wake me up whenever you're hungry. She watched as Izuku slowly slipped into sleep on the other sofa. She sneakily approached and whispered into his ears. I love you, Izuku-chan. She then stood up and headed for the shower. Before she could leave the room, though, she heard his unconscious reply. I love you, too, Himiko-ne. Himiko giggled as she closed the door quietly. You know what, Setsuna? Chiyo sighed. I want to support everything you do. But if you ask me for tips so you can seduce my assistant. Don't call it seduce. Setsuna lightly elbowed Chiyo with a red face. It's a clarification of admiration. Chiyo's only response was poking her cane at Setsuna's back. As the pair reached the nurse's office, Chiyo turned to her grandniece while grabbing the door's handle. Your idiots are here. Wait for me to dismiss them. Bet my hoodie they're doing something in there. Don't be ridiculous. Chiyo scoffed as she slid open the door. It's been only 3 hours. What could they be do? Lady, I just feel like I won't get you out of my mind. Chiyo watched Nato standing on a chair and sang with a pen in his hand as a microphone. I feel love, for the first time, and I know that it's true. I can tell by the look in your eyes. She turned to her assistant, who was singing along with a rolled-up notebook in his hand. As the beat continued, the 2 singing gremlins turned towards her. She could see their eyes widened at the sight of her and Setsuna. Before Chiyo could come up with a response, her grandniece pulled a chair in between them, jumped on it and sang. Lady, hear me tonight. 'Cause my feeling is just so right. Like a sign, they sang together perfectly. As we dance by the moonlight. Can't you see, you're my delight, and the number of singing goblins increased by 1. With a defeated sigh, Chiyo closed the door to her office to prevent the noise from attracting more of their kinds. As Chiyo pulled out her phone to record the scene, she contemplated at the thought of whether she should retire or not. Chapter 10. Case 9. Torino Sorahiko, Dear Diary. It seems my past has come to bother me again. He might be shorter than before, like way shorter, but he's still as annoying. I don't care if he's still taller than me. He's a goblin who can fly. I don't want your smartphone. Sensei. Toshinori stuttered as he hit his legs to stop them from shaking. It's me, Toshinori. Toshinori? Who's that? The old voice asked. What happened to Watanabe, the usual sales guy? It's All Might. Nana-sensei's student. Your punching bag? Ah, Toshinori. He could hear the old man grinned. Finally found the balls to contact me? I'm still shaking a lot, does that count? That'll wear off. So, why do you call? I've found him, Sorahiko-sensei. Toshinori spoke up seriously. My successor. Took you long enough, eh? Is it the kid Sasaki suggested? No, Toshinori shook his head. He's different. He's not an official hero student, but I see so much of Nana-sensei in him. Sensei, he's the right choice. I'm sure of it. You must have thought about it a lot, so why even call me? Despite your teaching method, Toshinori shivered at the memory. I value your opinion a lot, sensei. Would it be possible for you to come to UA and talk to him? What about Shuzenji? What's her take on your choice? She recognized his talent, too. She actually mentors him. Toshinori explained as he scratched his head. But she was not supportive. She wasn't outright against it, but I don't believe she supports it as well. If what you said about him is true, then I don't blame her. She took Nana's death hard. Maybe even harder than us. You know that. Toshinori turned quiet at that. Without a response from his student, Sorahiko coughed loudly to break the tension before saying, I'll come to UA and talk to the kid. Might as well watch the sport festival live and give you a good kick, for old time's sake. Before Toshinori could respond to the sudden threat, the call ended. Great, now his hands were shaking. Mom. Welcome home. Izuku gave his mother a smile. Dinner. Or breakfast is on the table. Instead of answering, Inko used her quirk and pulled the pen away from Izuku's hand. Midoriya Izuku, it's 3 a.m. Why are you still awake? I was waiting for you? At his mother's tone, Izuku looked away from her eyes. I'm not falling for that again, Izuku. Inko sighed. It's not good that this reminds me of my childhood. I didn't know you were such a night owl back then. Izuku raised an eyebrow. I mean, you still are now, but that's because of your job. No, back then, I had to stay up to make sure your grandma has enough sleep. Inko explained with a nostalgic smile as she threw herself onto the couch. I suppose the workaholic thing is genetic. There are so many cases to solve these days. You don't sound like someone who's tired of their job. Because I'm helping people with my job. Inko grinned. Guess that's genetics, too. Izuku chuckled as he watched Inko slowly fall asleep. He took a piece of blanket and put it over her. Quietly, he turned off the light, grabbed his report and sneaked out of the living room. Before the door was closed, he heard his mother call out to him. We're going out for lunch tomorrow. Himiko's choosing where we're going to eat if you wake up later than her. You wouldn't. Izuku squinted his eyes. Not if you go to sleep now. Inko replied. I'll unlock your door. She'll sneak in again. They're coming to you for frostburn, Midoriya Izuku. Chio poked her cane at Izuku's cheek. Why am I seeing them leaving with red faces? At the start of the first event, a hero course's student threw a glacier at the rest. While the rest of the heroic course wasn't affected, many from the general education, support and business department had to come to Izuku and Chio for their injuries. Because of how their quirks work, Chio and Izuku have separate booths to work in. Chio's quirk healed fast, but they took a lot out of the patients. Anyone who didn't want to rest on the beds at Chio's booth can come to Izuku so he could revitalize enough for them to continue enjoying the festival. But for some reason, anyone who visited Izuku's booth left with a red face. I didn't do anything. Izuku moved the cane away from his cheek. While holding their hands to heal, I complimented them for the good work, and told them that as long as they tried their best, they are already heroes to me. Sometimes I think you're doing it intentionally. I mean, yeah. I complimented them by myself. Maybe it's the heat. It was not the heat. Confirming that her assistant had zero clue about what he just did, Chio gave up and returned to her booth. Izuku only shrugged at his mentor before returning to his booth. And immediately, he found an old man in yellow laying in a pool of red. Izuku blinked at the sight before staring for a few minutes. After a few moments of awkward silence, the supposedly dead old man lifted his face up and looked at him. Izuku smiled and asked the old man. I can walk you to the canteen for a new ketchup bottle. Smart and calm. I like that. Sorahiko grinned. Everyone else squealed like a little girl. It was quite a surprise. Izuku chuckled. But I've seen enough blood to differentiate real and fake. Seemingly satisfied with Izuku's answer, the old man slowly moved towards the chair in front of the television and sat on it. After Izuku had done a quick job of cleaning up the tomato sauce splatter on the floor, he pulled another chair next to Torino and watched the second round of the festival with the old man. As the cavalry battle went on, Izuku found himself growing more and more excited at the sight of new quirks. Any teams you are cheering for? Sorahiko asked as he bit on a taiyaki. Izuku quickly ran over and get him a cup of tea, at which the old man accepted with a nod. Izuku then looked at the TV showing footage of teams trying to break through walls of glacier, enlarged hand swatting away others, explosions blasting off screen along with cheers and screams. It's hard to choose. Everyone's so cool. Izuku smiled. Fighting with everything they have, trying their best. It would be unfair to pick out a favorite. Why aren't you out there, then? Sorahiko asked. Don't you want to try your best like them? Be a hero? I am. Izuku smiled wider, his eyes never left the TV. After they've tried their best out there, I'll try my best in here to heal and patch them up. I mean, I know I'm not out there doing the fight like normal heroes. Izuku continued, not noticing Torino looking at him with nostalgia. But saving people isn't just winning a fight. It's about if I'm able to put a smile on their faces, making them feel safe. It's my way of being a hero. That's what my mom said when I was 6, anyway. I turned that into my whole belief system. A smart mother you have. Sorahiko chuckled. She sounds like a good friend of mine. Toshinori could learn a thing or two from her. Really? Izuku asked curiously. What is your friend like? A strong, confident, beautiful and smart woman. Snarky and mischievous and yet, denser than a rock. Sorahiko huffed amusingly. Her husband must have performed a ritual or something. That woman wouldn't get it if you took your shirt off in front of her. Can someone be that oblivious? Izuku chuckled. You have no idea, kid. Sorahiko laughed out loud. You should ask. Suddenly, the door to Izuku's booth slid open. Both occupants stopped their conversation, turned towards the door and found a tall, thin figure, and a senior lady with a pissed-off look on her face. Goblin. Chio raised her voice. Stop bothering my student, he's got work to do. Can it, Siren? Sorahiko grunted as he hopped off the chair. I'm just having a chat with the young lad. Besides, isn't he too nice to be your student, malicious bat? As the argument devolved further, Izuku waved goodbye to the tall blonde who bowed slightly to apologize before pushing the adults out of the room. Midoriya-san. Inko turned around and found a familiar set of seafoam green hair that reached just past her shoulders. Inko set down the cup of coffee she was holding and stood up. Fukukado-chan. Inko smiled as she hugged the younger heroine. What brings you here? Homicide. Grand larceny. Kidnapped. Still as workaholic as ever, I see. Emi laughed out loud. I was just in the area. Mind joining me for lunch? Was just in the area. Inko raised her eyebrow. Your school and agency are like 2, 3 prefectures away from here. What were you doing here? I was, Emi stuttered, her eyes darting around, not daring to meet with Inko's green, round eyes. Gift, that's right. I was here to buy some gifts. Ah, I see. Inko had a look of realization like she finally understood something. Well, if you want, I'll help after we've had lunch. Really? Emi smiled, a little too wide and bright before she regained her cool. I mean, thank you, Midoriya-san. I appreciate it. Anything for you, cutie. Inko giggled before she grabbed Emi's hand and left. As the scene was happening, from the corner, Sanza and Naomasa watched the interaction. After Inko pulled a red-face Emi out of the room, Sanza leaned over and whispered. You sure she doesn't know what's going on? Positive. Without looking up from his paperwork, Naomasa sipped his coffee. That's our brightest and densest detective at work right there. This is the third heroines who asked her out for lunch this week. Sanza emphasized. You're telling me she still has no clue? You'll get used to it.